It's a real privilege to be part of this national event. As I put it, the trailblazers that are Burngaw on conservation. This sort of the work that you do is phenomenal and is really sort of like a template for any other organisation in the country. I was very happy to be involved with them in 2016, where they did sort of a volunteer conservation sort of weekend, and I was able to provide some food at the end. But today, it's a first for me. So it's Zoom. I normally create sort of experiential, immersive, interactive events for young and old. Today I'm on my Todd in the beautiful place in Inishowen that I'm from, and I'm here overlooking Kinnigo Bay. So today, mainly what I hope to do is to give you sort of my message in relation to what Wild Strands is about, and why I created it, and why I believe it's more important than ever, even though that my sort of eclectic, creative, new cafe, Wild Strands in Mallinhead, sadly was a victim of COVID last August and had to close. I will reinvent myself. I'm in the process of restructuring and creating a website whereby I will have new offerings, and who knows where Wild Strands Cafe may appear again. So I'm delighted really to be involved and engaged again in something that I'm absolutely passionate about, which of course is seaweed. Now, this seaweed, I believe, is something that is gaining notoriety globally, but especially in Ireland. And I think it's only right that it is, because it's one of our almost up until recently a forgotten part of our food culture. And I feel very strongly about the story of food and how the story of food relates to place. When I first went out with my father-in-law, John Edward Logue, I just absolutely fell in love with this notion of going out into this beautiful landscape in Mallinhead on the White Strand below their house, and being part of that story that was going back generations, and learning really the fundamentals of how you pick, how you then walk through the fields, and you pick this here, which is what I'm going to be talking about mostly today. Carrigan moss. It's a red algae. It was tough work. It's where when you gather it, you had to walk it. It seemed miles. I'm sure it's less than a quarter of a mile, but it's when the tide was out. So it's dangerous. You can get cut off. You can slip as you come inshore. There's a lot of rack. I can remember Karen Dubsky from Coast Watch Ireland was out there, and she found a bit of a struggle, and she's been over quite a lot of beaches, and she was amazed at the species out there. There's not only fantastic array of macroalgae in terms of seaweed, but there's Zostra eelgrass, which she was particularly interested in. So it's a wonderful, diverse ecosystem. It's just, I know Moncom was talking about, we have to really connect with something more, and it's this moreness between that is happening. This very exciting part in the between land and sea. It's a very exciting. It's a very diverse part of the marine ecosystem. It's an area that I'm really fascinated with. So this here, Carrigan moss, it was part a long time ago. It was part of sort of as a food medicine. A lot of people around Inishowen, Donegal, and probably throughout lots of parts of Ireland would be very, very familiar with using this during times when they had a cold, sickness. It would be given to them in this form of a drink or as a dessert, mainly this blancmange. Why was it given to them? How did that come about? Why did they know that this was good for them? This is part of why I'm so interested in reconnecting with our past, with our food heritage, which a lot of there's quite a lot of gaps in our knowledge base around that. So I think the more that we engage and really try and rediscover it, the more we can sort of almost reclaim, reconnect with that story from our past. So again, the story was around Carrigan Moss was around the benefits of it for you, not only for humans but for animals as well. It was given a lot of times to cattle as a food source, especially when they were going to market. So they realized that this is a powerhouse of nutrients in here. But the old folks, they were right. They mightn't have known what scientists have now gone on to prove is the antiviral nature of it, antimicrobial nature of it, and this sort of anti-mucus part. So it is kind of funny because nature gives us a lot of hints if we can only look at it. If we can see this closely enough against the back of it, you can see almost there's a clue there. It's really in the shape of it. It almost gives us a clue that it's for our lungs. So all of these things for people with asthma or bronchitis and all, Carrigan moss is fantastic, really, really fantastic. And that's because today I'm going to be cooking with the Carrigan moss. I'm not going to be cooking with it here because as like a lot of seaweeds, there's usually a process. Um, there's usually a process we go through, and so it's either roasting, drying, cooking it, that all of a sudden you can use a seaweed. Of course, there is seaweeds that you can eat directly fresh, things like pepper, dulse, and sea lettuce and lots of other different types. But the Carrigan moss, as I would have learned when I took it from the beach, it was laid out in big squares, just on the glass, and then it was dried, it was bleached, and that was part of the. I suppose that was part of why I got involved. Even my father-in-law, John Edward, he looked at other Carrigan moss on the market and sort of realised it wasn't bleached to the same extent that he was happy with. As you can see, he bleached it. Again, there's ongoing discussions about is some of the nutrients being bleached out or not. Most of what is in the Carrigan moss, the substance that is sort of used the world over is the carrageenan, this thickening agent, this thickening emulsifying agent that is used as a preservative, E407, B407. It's used to sort of in this emulsifying this gel like this to bind because it's a carbohydrate, the polysaccharides, these complex chains that bind substances together, and that's where if people from an older generation and hopefully a new generation will experience this jelly-like consistency that is associated with Carrigan moss. It has a lot of other benefits as most other seaweeds have because it's really a powerhouse of nutrients, and this powerhouse of nutrients is again this trendy version of like is a new superfood. It's a new kale. It's a new this. It's a new that. It's nothing new to anyone that is passionate about Irish culture or Irish food heritage. So for me, it's really to taking that story on. And when I went and got the opportunity to create a cafe, I really wanted to break with the tradition of this European model that has been sort of showcased around Ireland. And I wanted to be bold, to be brave, and to create something that I believe that these ordinary foods that are so nutritious, so beneficial to us, should be available as it was available in years gone by, not out of a sense of poverty, which it was, which the legacy of the famine, the Irish famine, still holds almost in the mindset of people that seaweed was something, if it's to do with poverty, if it's something to do with with not having any food, which instead it should have been like the Japanese said that maybe only the emperor got the seaweeds because he realized the wonderful antioxidants, 10 times more minerals at least than ordinary plants. It's a whole cornucopia of wonderful, wonderful substance within it. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to to go on about that. So back here, I'm looking at this dried seaweed. So the most important part now is to start this demonstration is to take. So I'm using about 10 grams here of dried seaweeds. It's very difficult to know the gelling qualities, but the thing that we need to do first of all is, because this is dry, now most seaweeds are dried when you buy it in the shop. It can expand, it could expand up to 70%. It really depends on the process of who dried it, the condition it was dried in, the conditions it was stored in. It's very important with seaweeds that you don't allow any sort of moisture or anything once it is dried get to the seaweeds. So there, I'm just putting it in cold water, as you can see. So there is 10 grams of carrigan moss. It's now going to be hydrated. Now, the reason why I'm hydrating carrigan moss, I know now that by hygiene standards and by everything else, a lot of carrigan moss is now air dried in very controlled situations. Years ago, it was dried on grass. So some people who still forage it might still use that old traditional means. So, and also, so there may be some little bits of grass in it, but also when you're picking, when you're collecting the seaweed, you may there's little sometimes it can be little crustaceous sort of like shells, barnacles, different other worms, usually crustaceous worms, growing on the carrigan moss, and little epiphytic sort of other seaweeds that are growing within the carrigan moss. So we need to make sure to clean all of them off. Again, seaweeds, most of them are edible and they're exceptionally sustainable. And that's something that I know Bjorn Bjorn is very, very, very enthused about. And that's why I want to have that discussion around food, is to eat food that is sustainable, that is local, that is something that will nourish us. Because we shouldn't, as a developing country, we shouldn't have this question of poor nutrition, of obesity in Ireland. We should reclaim that, reclaim our local foods and start to promote it and use it. And especially during these times of COVID, when we're restricted to within our 5 kilometres, we're getting to see around our area and going to your local shop the value of communicating with people, but the value of nature for people that has realised that they are, that there is a transformative change happening because people are understanding the benefits of being in nature, especially with people who are lucky enough, and we're so lucky in Ireland to have such pristine waters, to go to our coastline and to actually sense and feel that benefit to your own health. So as this here hydrates, you can, some people say 10-15 minutes. Again, it will depend on the drying process. I'm reasonably happy with that there now. So that's only been like a minute or two. So there's a slight discoloration in the water because I know this is really, really clean. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to check to see if there's any little bits growing that I don't want. And I'm going to then just leave them behind and put the fresh stuff into this dish. Now, the dish that I am creating today is a dish, again, that is very much related to the place that I learned how and got so inspired by the story of seaweed. When I collected it, it was going down to collect crottle Now, Crottle was just a local name, like a lot of food in Ireland, especially along the coast. Um, there's Irish derivatives, and they were used. And so this name Crottle, which to the best of my knowledge is sort of somehow related to moss. We know it's not a moss or a lichen. We know it's so there is just some of the water is slightly discolored, and I've got the clean Carrigan moss here. So crottle. So the dish that I'm creating today is crottle flummery. So the crottle is the Carrigan moss. Again, in the area along that beach, the people like John and a few other families that collected the beach. The beach was divided, of course, because it was a very important socio-economic part of their livelihood. They sold on the Carrigan moss for generations, and that brought them a valuable source of income. So therefore, there were strips, almost like the Turby rights, and associated with collecting turf. So there was very clear markers almost on rocks on the beach in years gone by. Sadly, most of that has disappeared, and people are not collecting at the beach anymore. So now, this crottle, because I want to use that name, it's part of the storyline. So I'm going to put this in here, a saucepan, and now I'm going to add the milk. So this is a litre of milk. And also what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just put this on. And normally in McElhinney, my storyline was based on fire. I cooked on fire to try and recreate foods that were from a long time ago, whereby I created dishes like around trying to use the grains like spelt, rye, barley, and I made all these here in flatbeds, and I cooked them on what I perceived was a bit of stone. So I used it like a pizza oven to create these old foods. So today it's on for the times is in it. I'm using my trusted wee sort of like camping stove. So it's on the gas, and I'm going to let that there bring it up to the boil. But there's another ingredient that I'm going to use that makes the part of this a crottle flummery. So the flummery was, going back another couple of centuries, was to do about soaked grains. Now, in generations gone by, they would have soaked these here. They would have almost brought them to like a fermented stage, and they would have been known as sounds. Again, very beneficial to our health. We know about fermented foods. So at the moment, I have soaked this here, which is 100 grams of oats and 500 grams of water. So all you do then is shake it. And I'm not going to quite put all of it in. I only want about 300 grams of it, or 300 milliliters. So I'm just going to measure that out. So again, flummery was a dessert that was used, again, like a jelly substance. So again, just like people that still make porridge, we all know the benefits for our heart, especially with oats. So now in using the oats, I'm creating another thickening agent. This is a thickening agent among another thickening agent. But again, I'm getting all the goodness from the oats. I'm not using the whole oats. I'm just using like the soluble, the liquid form. And again, if you kept that going, you could learn the process of how to ferment it, and that would be sounds. But people used to drink this here milk, and again, this part, so I'm going to add in, it's about 200 there, so I'm going to just get a wee bit more. And I'm going to just add in a little bit more, so it's about 300 grams. Just get that down. And I'm just going to pour that right in there. So I'm going to let that come up to the boil. I'm not adding any flavorings because today I'm going to be flavouring my crottle flummery with honey and with a little bit of whiskey because I'm celebrating my return back. So there's nothing like a wee dram. I've created this in other parts, especially when I was overlooking the Urus Mountains and I was showing. People got excited when I used a little bit of poaching. And how could I not when I was in the Republic of Poaching, which was around Urus. So today I'm going to be using a beautiful whiskey that contains actually kombu. So I love to see these new products that are infusing seaweed within their products or using them. So I'm particularly delighted as well because it's currant. And that is another thing that I celebrate, which is our built maritime heritage. I've been very lucky to have in our community the wonderful McDonald boat builders, and I've been privileged to be involved in a number of projects and building the traditional foil punt and restoring a Drontham style boat, the Tsunami. So, as we're waiting for this here to boil, I want to then just tell you about a few of the ingredients that I'll need to add, which is eggs. Now, normally, when you're making a Carrigan moss pudding, you would leave out the oat part, the soaked oats, which are soaked for 2 days. You would just use the Carrigan moss and the milk. And when you use the Carrigan moss and the milk, after about 15 minutes after it was boiled, you would strain it. I will show you again how you strain it. And then you can add your flavorings, your bit of sugar, your honey. Some people added lemon. Again, the old folks added lemon just when it was about to serve. And they were right because the carrageenan that's in the Carrigan, there's question marks about adding acid and what it does. Maybe it may change the bioavailability of the good products, but it seems to break down, and it seems to there's question marks over that. So I would advise not to add the lemon until especially toward the end or in the acid. But again, you can flavor this to whatever you want. You can add cocoa powder. You could add lovely wild forage plants like meadowsweet, elderflower, all these wonderful things you can add. So really just look at it as a base. So today I'm as I said, I'm going to be using as my main flavouring honey and whiskey. And I'm keeping it quite simple. I'm going to be using eggs. I'm using the white and the yolk. So I'm essentially going to make a custard and essentially a sort of a Swiss meringue. So as that there is coming to boil, I have trusted people in the background. As you can imagine, anybody that knows me, this is the work, the design of not me, because I'm not of this nature. So it's, of course, in the background is my wonderful daughter, Relching McElhinney. So I'm going to ask Relching just to take that away and put it on our other gas, as I'm going to now use this here water, and I'm going to get it on now. So that is going to be brought to the boil. Now again, when you're bringing it to the boil, I want you to keep an eye on it, because once the milk comes up, bring it down to a simmer and cook it for about 15 minutes, because it will boil over. And again, with the Carrigan moss, it can be quite difficult to clear up. So just really keep an eye on it. So bring it up to the boil, and then just watch it. Watch it very carefully, and let it simmer, just a slow simmer for about 15 minutes. And again, get to know your food, get involved, pick up the Carrigan, and you'll see it slightly breaks down. Again, so now I've got this cold water on, or hot water on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slight meringue. Again, in this crop of flummery, there's a few processes that you don't have to do. So again, with the eggs, if you want to forget about the eggs, what you can do is put double cream up to a soft peak consistency. That's where it would just drop off. It would just hold on a whisk, hold on a whisk, and then just fold it into the carrigan moss, again adding whatever flavorings you want. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm hopefully not going to knock anything over. I'm going to put on this here. So what I have in here is boiling water. So this here is what's called a bain-marie. So I'm basically cooking. So I'm basically cooking. So if we've got another bowl. So what I want to do is I want to just have the whites in here. So I'm just going to let the whites go through my hands. And again, this is I'm on the heritage in school. And when I get back into the schools, I love to get the kids to be involved with food. So things like this here of separating just with their hands, again, creates that where a lot of young people now are not really getting involved in the kitchen as maybe like the way I was lucky enough. Just going to wash my hands with my mum. So I'm going to start whisking that there. And when I whisk it, I'm going to add in the sugar. So the sugar is, so I'm just looking at a bit of wee sign here. So the sugar I've got is 100 grams of, I'm using 100 grams of soft brown sugar. I particularly like using unrefined sugar where I can. So, and in the cafe, I apologize for the noise. So here, I'm just going to turn off the heat now, or just going to turn it down a bit. I want to keep whisking it until it turns a pale colour. It's not going to add any body into it, but it's going to bring it up to temperature. Now, if I wanted to cook a meringue, I would have a temperature, a food temperature, and I would probably have it up to temperature about 175. This is not what I want. I'm just going to create a basic meringue because I'm just going to use this meringue in my croquette flummery. So, again, around what I've done, I'm very lucky that in everything that I've done in the Wild Sands Cafe, I involved local products. Like my uniform was from Joe Doherty, Uniforms in Moville, and here there's other family company, Moville Clothing. So so many people around the area, great support. So that's another benefit of when local cafes look into creating food. Be brave and get to know your local area and invest, just like the Moville Pottery here. Get to know your local area and invest in them, because you'll find that they have taken a leap of faith to create these fantastic products, and it's great then if we can create that sort of full circle. So here we go, and put it into the mixer now. So as I put it into the mixer, so again, these here parts is because this was a dish that I created in the cafe. Again, a little labor intensive, involving a little, maybe too many stages for a lot of people. But again, this meringue is something that you don't need to do. Now, when I put this on, I'd be grateful if Grania could come in, because you don't need to hear this noise. I'd be grateful if Grania came in and maybe showed a few slides of some of the activities that wheat wild strands have done. Okay, over to you, Grania, if you can. So, folks, thanks for that.
They were fabulous photos. You might speak a little bit about some of them.
Oh, great. Some of the photos, again, you might see me there doing a little bit of it's Tai Chi. So as a company now, I'm hoping to focus on education and tourism. And the tourism part is where I develop packages around slow adventure. The adventure part is very much in what I do, which is seaweed, food, and adventure. So adventure part is where I look at the mindfulness. Seaweed is so bountiful in terms of nutritious, great for your mind, like through magnesium, potassium, all of these things. But especially when I go out to forage, I'm a qualified Tai Chi, Qigong instructor. So therefore, in the landscape, with some of the events I practice, the clients are able to, so it's all about getting rid of stress, reconnecting, getting your energy flowing, and therefore that's what I do. Again, through some of the practice, you'll see that I've been involved with slow food festival in Derry a number of times, and I've also been involved in slow adventure in Derry. So I've been involved in numerous events to promote this wonderful array of products around seaweed, but also about wellness and about making that reconnection with the place. So now, if I can, from this side, I'd like to take this off, which is, maybe if I can ask Routine just to do that here, that'd be great. So look, what I'd like to be able to do now is to sort of go with this here. I'd like to make a custard. So in here, I've got the yolks. And here, I'm just going to put in a bit of this hot milk. So in effect, creating a custard. Again, we just dribble this on slowly. So, again, I've realized the time. When this here came back, I did it quite quickly, is whereby when I just want to show you on hindsight, when I got the carrigan moss went through a sieve, and I pushed it through with a wooden spoon, and then I scraped the underside of it. So that is what's in this here now. So I've got this here custard part, and here's one that has cooled down, and I'm going to just add that there in now. And because it is cooled down, so you have to wait now until this is cooled down. Now, again, the eggs there was warm there, but I realized that with time here, I probably would have preferred to put it back on the heat, but here we go here. And there we have this here mixture, and now I can add in the meringue. Now the meringue hasn't really thickened that much, it's just a nice consistency. I'm just going to add this here all in and just whisk it through. This is cold now. And once I put that there in, I'm now with my spatula, which is, where's my spatula going? So I've got my spatula here. I'm just going to add this in here. As you can imagine, folks, I'm not in a kitchen with things to hand. So here we go. Here is the meringue, and it's just been folded in there. Now here is basically now my cotton flummery. So I'm just going to now just keep that going around. Okay, so to do is just to show you that now. And now the last part is with the glass. But as I told you earlier, the main flavor in here is just to keep it pure and to get a real taste of the area. I'm very blessed here. There's wonderful honey and it's shown from Muff honey. There is Inishowen honey. And I know quite a few of the beekeepers. They're fantastic to me. PG was a man that was giving me honey. So there is some honey. That's about 20 grams. And now the last is fabulous whiskey. So here we go. Again, it's about 10 mils. Again, if you don't want to add in the whiskey, again, you can use things like when you're flavoring things like rosemary, as I said earlier, the medicine. Otherwise, things like nutmeg is fantastic as well. So I'm just going to fold this in now again. And now the only thing that has to be done now is really to get some feedback. And what I want to do now is to put it into a glass. So in my coffee shop, you end up with something like a creme brulee. So this is put in the fridge now for at least 4 hours. And it will set like a jelly. So as it sets like a jelly, it should be unctuous, it's nutritious. So here we go, there it is there. And then something I don't have time to do is, I sneak in a little bit more seaweed by using ground seaweeds. I use butter, I use oats, I use brown sugar again. I toast them in a pan so they come into sort of a crumble. And there is my crumble from them. So folks, I don't know how that worked, but it was interesting for me.
That was great. Thanks a million, William. Like, it was really really nice to kind of to see the format, and I think it worked really well. I'm looking forward to seeing your YouTube channel.
There's some lovely feedback. Oh, sorry, there's some lovely feedback as well in the chat. So we have loving this demonstration today. We'd love to have William here at our organic gardens in West Donegal. So you've got some good fans out there. And one other thing, William, people are looking for the recipe. I'm not too sure what the best thing to do is to get it from you now. Yeah,
great. I can either send it on to Burn Bia, or else what I can do is, if people could, to get me up and going, if you could just hit a wee like on the Wild Strands Facebook page and all the social medias. As I said, I'm in the process of restructuring. So any sort of support, you sort of go, look, get at it, or we'd love to see. As in my logo, it is a mobile, there's the fork, there's the knife. So I'm hoping to get going mobile. If the cafe doesn't happen, the cafe might happen. And I bring the place with me. This is Glashidi Island, where I picked, most people think it's the luggage on top. It's Glashidi Island, where I looked when I was harvesting the seaweed in Malin Head. And this is the 4 strands of the kelp. And that is represent my 4 children. And balance is all about, the black and the white there is about balance, the yin and yang. And that's myself and my wife just trying to hold it all together.
That's just brilliant, William. I'm very impressed. That is fab.
Really about a person that is a great friend of mine, Sebastian Furci, who is a genius in terms of artwork, but above anything else, a true friend.
It's really good. We have another comment there from Lynn Gillespie that she doesn't cook, but she is inspired to try this. So thanks so much. I've just put your Facebook page in the chat, and Lynn also says she'd love to go to the cafe. And I think that was something I was saying to you, William, when we were speaking on the phone. It was on my hit list, and yeah, I think you should go mobile. I hope you do.
Yeah, I do with a lot of other people. So that's going to, any kind of feedback on Facebook or anything would probably give me that impetus to sort of believe that, get back and maybe with a bit of support, I can hopefully get back to you.
Just one very last quick question as well. Someone has asked if the milk was pasteurized or unpasteurized.
I used pasteurized. I was very lucky to have a local guy, John, in Malin, and he delivered organic milk, which was from the Greenhill farm in Inishowen. They've since closed. So it's just an ordinary milk. On pasteurized milk, I was looking into it. It is available, so of course you could use that, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But I haven't.